do one up on scene. I'll be assuming Caroline Street Command. I got a 2.5-story wood occupied multiple dwelling. I got heavy fire from the second floor, Charlie side. I have an exposure on the Delta side. We have one line stretch not in operation yet. Primary searches are underway. Status of the fire is doubtful. One passing command. I'm on the first line. Speed advised. We're on speed. 2-story wood frame. I got heavy fire from the Alpha side.
Welcome back, fans of the Volley Chief. This is Chief David Lenart. Have a exciting new episode as always. I don't think I've had a boring episode yet, but other than when Pigeon's on, right? He gets mad when we talk about him. But my guest today, very well known in the Southern Connecticut area. He's been a partner of mine, I would say, proudly for probably 20 years now of us sharing a border. So I'm going to let him introduce himself, and we're going to talk a little bit today. We're facing down another winter storm, which, depending on where you live in the country, everyone has their weather threats. If we're up here in New England, winter storms are something we always worry about. Tropical storms and hurricanes come along in the summer. If you're down south, obviously, more severe weather out west. They have wildfires, heat waves. But we're going to talk a little bit about what we do up here to prepare for these winter storms and kind of what you could be doing and why it helps the organization to have this plan first. But before that, I'm going to introduce Joe Laucella, my special guest. Joe, give us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, my name is Joe Laucella. I'm 30-year EMS, former volunteer firefighter, currently full-time emergency management director, still working actively also in EMS as the assistant chief for Echo Hose Ambulance in Shelton. Made this my career about 20 years ago. And just happy to be here. Been friends with Dave for a long time. I'm actually getting ready to take a quick nap because we've got a big storm coming in. So just wanted to jump on with you for a little bit before I get some rest, before I wake up about 2 or 3 this morning and start monitoring the storm that's coming in.
Right. And a lot of departments don't realize a couple things. You should always have a plan for these events. And now, fortunately, for where we live, I would say a lot of our events, we have the luxury of time. Would you agree?
Absolutely. A lot of our events are pre-planned. We have some lead up. Of course, we get the occasional microburst or small little tornado or, but we don't have necessarily those types of disasters that come kind of unexpectedly or rapidly. Ours are generally pre-planned, and it gives us a little time to kind of get our teams in place so we can deal with the situation at hand.
Right. A blizzard, a large winter storm, ice storm, even in tropical storms, the hurricanes that we get, we have days notice of those. So the ability for the agencies to pre-plan and coordinate is very easy in those types of events. It's like you mentioned, the sudden microburst or the small tornado, the flash flood we had a few years ago, which was one of the more, interesting weather phenomenons I've seen up here. Those are the ones that kind of really get you. So there's no reason as officers and as chief officers that we don't have these plans in place. And by now, it should really just be a page in a playbook. We shouldn't be reinventing the wheel every time an event comes along.
Absolutely. You have your game plan. You may be able to pull that out at any given time. Sure, you may veer from it a little bit. You may make some alterations, but at the end of the day, you have your base plan. Kind of gives you a blueprint of where you need to go. What you should be doing. Leading up to the event, during the event, and post the event. So, we find it helpful. If anyone hasn't done that yet, start to build out that playbook, put it in writing. Share it with your new folks, give it to your new supervisors, your new line officers, give them an understanding of what the expectation is and kind of what some of their roles and responsibilities are leading up to these events.
And again, like always, it's got to be a team approach. You got to include the fire department, you got to include, EMS, police, public works all together. For us, I also think, too, there's a huge value in having this professionally set up and ready to go because it's going to make the department look better. There are a lot of people who are skeptical of organizations because, they're just volunteers or, they do this part-time, but the police department's full-time. when you show up with a prepared plan and a united front, your value to the community is so much better. And by showing that standardized level of preparedness for all events, it really does increase your stock and it increases your value in the community. And when does that come into play? Well, it comes into play at budget time. A lot of the powers to be in the city will remember how prepared and how well you handled those large scale incidents, and that's kind of a big effect on your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people rely on us every day, and when your community is in crisis, when you can, have confidence, when the community has confidence in you, knowing that you have a solid plan, you can execute that plan, and you can deliver. You know, they're gonna, kind of stand by your side. We all have good times and bad times, and we want to make sure that we take these opportunities when we can prepare for things, to take those opportunities, prepare well, deliver well, and then sometimes when we get caught off guard with things, it makes a big difference, especially when people know that on a regular day-to-day basis you're pretty well prepared and ready to go.
Right. And Joe, run us down your asset list in Shelton. Give us just Shelton. I always say is one of the more amazing communities in my area. When we were kids, it was really farm. There wasn't much in the way of commercial. It was still a lot of farmland, a lot of open field, and now it's become a very commercially centered powerhouse of our area and become a kind of a major player in the state of Connecticut. But give us the population, the size, what
Sure. Yeah.
assets
No,
you
I mean,
have,
Shelton,
and
sees over 50,000 people a day that comes into town for work and recreation, restaurants, different medical offices, doctors' offices. When I started 30 years ago, we were a small little farm town, but we grew, and we have high rises and apartment buildings and all kinds of businesses. I think we have over 1,800 businesses now. Everything from Subway, international headquarters, wiffle ball, some major corporations from around the world. So now we respond to almost 7,000 emergency calls a year. We started off as a 100% volunteer department, had to go to a blended model. Today we're still an active volunteer service with over 75 volunteers at any given time, working alongside those that have chosen to make this a career as well. We work as one unified team to respond to, like I said, almost 7,000 emergencies a year. We're supported by a fully volunteer fire department. They're amazing. They've got great members, great trained personnel who operate multiple large-scale incidents and fires each year, as well as a police department that work in partnership with us and the fire department to make sure we have a good unified command to serve the community when necessary.
right. And like I said, I always tell everyone when we were kids, right from downtown to Stop and Shop on Bridgeport Ave was nothing, and now it's completely developed, and it's just really an amazing town transformation. But we have a lot of commonalities when it comes to these storms. Now, obviously, the first thing you think about is beefing up your staff. I mean, that's the number one thing. Now, obviously, in the model that we use in Derby, the daytime's covered uh, by paid staff, the nighttime covered by volunteers. You guys have paid staff on the clock 24/7. I mean, I always use a 6-inch approach. That was always my kind of gauge of when we should start adding, especially with snow. If it was going to be 6 inches or more, let's start working on that. There's so many inappropriate jokes I can make right now about that, but it's a PG show. What about you? How did you usually determine when
Yeah, I
the
agree with
winter
you. I think
storms
it's
were going
like
to be
six
covered?
inches or above. We start thinking about bringing in extra resources. We have that one, team where we'll send an email out to all staff, who's available, who's willing to come in early for their shift, who's willing to stay late, who's willing to pick up extra ambulances, any given time. We run three cars on during the day, two cars on the overnight, all ALS level cars as much as possible. But doing so, that really, forces us to upstaff as needed, and be able to really provide, the resources that our community needs on a day-to-day basis, but also be prepared when the storm comes through. And really, when storms come through, it's not very busy, but we need to think about what time are we going to get our folks in to get there before the storm. Because when I have people trying to commute to work in the middle of a storm, it's dangerous for them. I don't want them getting hurt. Does that mean we're going to, let's offer to pay them for an extra 6 hours, 12 hours, get there early, be there in house, safe, ready to go at the start of their shift, and add some additional crews and resources. Carrying people through the snow is dangerous. It's labor intensive. We want to have extra people on to help, with those tasks that are so important for patient care and for rescuing folks in the need of care. So there's a lot of tasks that need to be done, and staffing is just one of the major components of that. Is having, the depth. You get a storm that lasts a couple of days. When we had the blizzard back in 2013, we ran for 2 or 3 days solid, calls in holding for hours at a time, not being able to get to different places around town, and really just working as a team with our partners and in the local towns, the National Guard, the fire departments, police departments, other EMS agencies, to do what we have to do to get the job done. You also think about logistics. How are we going to feed these people? Things may not be open to go and get food. So do I have enough food in house? Do I have enough? And I'm not sending crews on the road empty-handed, because they get stranded. They need to have water. They need to have food. They need to have extra blankets, so in case they do get stranded out in the ambulance or fire apparatus, they can take care of themselves until we can get them help. And that actually happened to us and many other agencies, many years ago during recent blizzards in this past decade.
Yeah, so we'll bring in staff. Obviously, having the rescue side, it's a little bit different for us. So we'll staff both ambulances. We'll staff the rescue. We'll usually actually even staff a fly car too, because as you know, during a storm, having a couple guys in a pickup or a couple guys in an SUV, or even during the blizzard, one of the best vehicles, we had the Polaris Rangers, the six wheels. Those were getting around great during the big blizzard compared to regular vehicles. And you're staffing up. Another thing too, considering is changing your deployment. Derby's very simple, right? I've talked about it. You got one town split up the middle by a river, so everything's kind of east and west. The ambulances are located downtown at the storms. A lot of times they're in the larger at the storm's firehouse, not at the storms being the storm. But a lot of times during a large event, a large snowstorm, some of the tropical storms, we'll staff a crew on one of the ambulances and move them across town to deploy them with one of the firehouses. And I think that's something too. A lot of people don't think a lot about, but sometimes you might have to move some of your resources around. You know your district, you know where the hard spots are to get to, and you can make a good call by moving a crew from one firehouse to another, moving an asset from one building to another, because it's more likely going to be
Absolutely.
spread out and needed in other
We have a
places.
snow plan in place so that when snow gets over 6 inches, we will relocate resources around the town and station them in some of the fire departments. And we'll also have a dual response. In many of these types of storms, where the fire department may not necessarily go out with us on every medical all the time, but it's on an automatic dispatch when we have really significant storms. Um, Tomorrow may be one of those times where if we see that the snow is getting pretty deep, we may speak to the on-duty command officers and ensure that we have a response to assist with those things. But deploying your resources, spreading them out in the community, ensure faster on-scene times, and, during the inclement weather is an important part of that plan.
Right. And I was thinking about when you said that, I could recall a couple times where we would send, an engine would go with the ambulance, and they would say like, "Oh, the engine got there." By the time the ambulance got there, the guys had the sidewalk shoveled from the street to the door so that the ambulance crew can get right in. It just makes sense to add that additional manpower that you otherwise would have sitting around to it. And I think that's another good thing. Another asset that you need to be involved with, and another crew you need to have on speed dial, is your public works department. Now we're fortunate in Derby that our public works kind of shares one of the fire department radio frequencies, so it's just a flip of a switch, and you're on the radio with the public works dispatchers. But our police department does a phenomenal job of every time there's a medical, every time there's a fire, they'll call public works, and you'll hear the public works dispatcher, say, hey, there's a medical on Derby Avenue. Can somebody go over there and plow? And a lot of times when we're getting close to the call, you'll pick up a plow. Or again, some of the bigger storms, you've had plows at the firehouse, and as soon as a call comes in, they're leading the way. I would agree with you that the 2013 blizzard, which we just had the anniversary of a couple days ago, I don't know. Talk about getting old. I don't remember when they started naming winter storms. It's Winter Storm Nemo, I guess, up here as they refer to it, but that was the blizzard of 2013. We did that. We had plows that were automatically dispatched, loaders, and then we even had, like you mentioned, the National Guard was involved. Things that I don't think we've planned for, but we never thought we'd get involved in. Um, Obviously, this planning for a winter event and the planning for a summer event like a hurricane or a tropical storm, it's relatively the same. I mean, the you're worried about the wind, you're worried about power, and you're worried about flooding, and that's what it is. And Derby and Shelton being inland but affected by tidal rivers, we've had issues with flooding, power outages, and the wind. So it works both ways. I think another asset of, and I know, Joe, see, this is the part where everyone's going to make fun of us because we're a little bit nerdy about this. I'm a big fan of using the NIMS forms. I'm a big fan of sticking with the get a 201 ready. And again, it shows your professionalism. If you show up to a pre-meeting with the right paperwork, this is what FEMA uses. And that's where on the back end, those of us that have sat in the bigger chairs, when you're paying, so in Derby, you'll get paid somewhere, but depending about $20 an hour, depending on what you're doing for the fire department, the ambulance corps during the storm. Now you think, oh, it's just $20 an hour, but you're paying, 20 guys $20 an hour for sometimes 36 hours. It's a huge expense to the town, or it's a huge additional expense to the organizations. So down the road, when if a disaster area is declared, and you start going for reimbursement, that's why I recommend using the FEMA forms and the NIMS forms right off the bat, because that's what they're looking for on the back end. And you're much more into it than I am with emergency management.
214
but am I wrong?
Is honestly a super important form when you're running a large scale incident. We started using 214s during the pandemic, and during the pandemic, we actually were using a 214 for every 12-hour shift, where we were logging who was there, what hours on the truck, what calls we did, because we weren't sure if there was going to be reimbursement afterwards. That was a great way for our company officers, to get used to a 214. Probably the easiest way to integrate a 214 is just using it as a shift report. If you guys have, on-duty officers that will come in and come out, on a regular basis, or if you're a paid crew and you have on-duty supervisors, a 214 is a great way to get experience, and it's a great way just to pass along communication to the next shift. It really is an easy way to start to integrate that into your day-to-day format. They're online. You can do them, fillable PDFs. When you have an event in your town, whether it be a weather event or some kind of fireworks or some kind of carnival, put together an ICS package. When you do your pre-planning meeting, like you had said, it's handing it out to all your staff. There's nothing like when your staff come in, and especially if they're staggered, to say, hey, listen, here's the plan for the day, and you hand them a package of 201, a 202, safety message, and they know exactly what their responsibilities are. They know who to call if there's an emergency. They know what frequency to go on. It really clears up any confusion, and it keeps it consistent, for all those responders that may be working, a large-scale incident, a pre-planned incident, and then you have good documentation of it as well. Listen.
Right. And as you mentioned, a great example is, again, Derby and Shelton being, they're separated by a bridge that's 200 yards long and the river that's underneath it. But the downtown neighborhoods are interchangeable, and the fireworks every summer, 4th of July, the towns go in on fireworks. They launch half the fireworks from the Derby side, half the fireworks from the Shelton side. And we do this. We just, the ease of having this pre-filled out, pre-ready to go, our 201, our two. I mean, at this point, yes, we do just change the dates on a lot of it, update the names because the plan is the plan, and we've been, tinkering it for years. But right a few weeks before, you'll email me yours, I'll email you mine, and we look at it. We know what it is. It's a standardized form. It's standard language, and it makes sense to you because you're familiar with it
Yeah,
and you
and listen,
understand
what a great way
the value of it.
to have teamwork and collaboration with those within your own town or city is get the other disciplines to work together to form one IAP. Because it really, didn't they want to have one IAP for that event? But then you start working with partners, in other towns that maybe you don't necessarily work with every day. Have that planning meeting, write that IAP, set those goals and objectives, write it together. It gives you an opportunity to sit around the table with people that maybe you don't work with on a regular day-to-day basis. Lets you get to know a little bit more about their operation. They get to know about your operation. And at the end of the day, you come up with this great document that you hope that you don't have to use for more than just informational purposes. But, you can hand it to everybody who shows up on scene. If something goes bad, you have documentation that you were well prepared. You're not going to have people saying that you weren't prepared for something that maybe turned bad, that you weren't expecting. It's important to have a plan, and people are going to expect that from us now as well as we move together in the future.
Yeah, and back to that degree of professionalism, think about it. Your mayor, your selectman, your board of whoever call you, and they bring you in. You're the authority, right? You're the fire department. You're the ambulance corps, and they say, "Hey, look, we're going to have a firework display downtown, and it's going to bring in 10,000 people. Do you guys What do you guys want to do? Do you guys want to have a plan for it?" And you pull out a couple of post-it notes versus you pull out neatly prepared forms. Again, it's gonna greatly increase your stock in the community. You're going to email it to the mayor's staff. You're going to say, "Hey, here's our plan." And as you mentioned, if something goes wrong, that's your fallback. Hey, this is the plan. This is what we're doing. We were ready for it. I always laugh because one of my favorite quotes to use in the fire service when we talk about having a plan is Mike Tyson's. Right? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. It's the truth. But you had a plan, and you could say, okay, and it includes a lot of things, right? You think about I'm off the top of my head, I'm thinking the fireworks plan. It's a lot of crowd management, what to do if there's a medical, what to do if there's a fire, what to do if there's a lost child. All these different things that happen during large festivals. What to do if there's some people get a little bit crazy, but I even saw one on what to do if there was a
Yeah.
large bee sting incident. Because someplace one time there was a festival and they hit a bee's nest, and it's like, okay, so you're planning. It's making the organization stronger. It's making the responders stronger. It also it helps train your younger members. I mean, get a group of your younger officers together and tell them, okay, hey, look, we're getting a hurricane, we're getting a tropical storm. I want you guys to come up with an incident action plan for it. It's a great way to bring the next level up. Common theme lately where we're predicted to have these large snow events, and they're not materializing. So I just want to take a minute and thank Joe for being here today. I think I'm having a little bit of a technical difficulty, but it was a great having him on. We're definitely going to have him again with his wealth of knowledge and in the expertise. So for everyone, have a good night, be safe, and we'll see you later. FD1's back in service. Commands terminated.